What is going on, nerds? I'm the Man Nerd, and this is another episode of Nerd to Nerd, where I talk to cool nerds. And today is going to be a very special one. But first off, what is a nerd? A nerd is anyone and everyone. That person you see in the corner of the coffee shop every day? Oh yeah, they're a film nerd. They make movies using various noodles as their characters and objects. Your 60-year-old doctor? Yeah, that's right. They have an obsession with My Little Pony. The way you look, where you were born, who you're attracted to, how you identify, none of that matters. All it takes is one passion, a love for something beyond yourself. That is a nerd. I am joined with my co-host today, GallantFool. He plays Kaibond on the Real Play D&D podcast Rift. Hey, how's it going, Gallant?
Good as always, my friend. How are you?
Doing great. All right, so why don't you bring us in, since I did all that talking there, bring us into who we have joining us today.
Well, today we have a collection from the AllThe RPG. I'm trying to think of the way that we would describe this site. It would be there's so much that it does.
Well, I like the word hub. It's just
hub is a great choice.
Yeah, it's a hub.
But today we have with us the founder of all the TTRPGs, Sean Schutz.
Yeah, it's Sean Schultz. Thank you.
Sean Schultz, thank you.
Yep.
Project manager Jeff Cook.
That's me.
And the marketing director Wade Crowther.
Yes, happy to be here.
We're going to start off just a little personal here. Any of you can jump in, and then if you don't want to answer, that's fine. If you feel like it's something you want to answer, go for it. So my first question here, I'm going to direct this first one at Sean.
All right.
What was your first nerdy passion?
Well, I have to say, I'm a child of the 80s. I'm an older guy, and I got started on the Commodore 64. And one of my, actually, it was a TRS-80, but one of my earliest memories was going over to my friend's house and checking out his Dungeons and Dragons books in 1981 while we were playing Lode Runner on the Commodore 64. So that's my earliest, like, true nerd memory. So it was great.
Oh, that's nice. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember my Atari from back in the day.
Yep, I had one of those as well, and it's super fond memories.
All right. Jeff and Wade, do you want to throw in yours?
Yeah, I'll throw mine in real quick. So I have older brothers, and I just remember at a young age, one day, my brother was drawing a scene from Star Wars. And it was the first time I had seen my brother spend some sort of time doing anything besides sitting on the couch. And watching him draw that, I was just memorized that he was creating something so awesome that I think the next day I went and bought my first Boba Fett action figure. So there you go.
That's nice. Heck yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so for me, I got sucked in Warcraft 2. If any of you gentlemen have been able to get your hands dirty on that.
Of course.
Again, like Jeff, I also have older brothers, and one of them really loved playing that, so I would just sit there behind him and watch him play for hours. Jeff and I are also actually cousins, so with him and his brothers being nerdy, I got a lot of, I guess, experience from them and Magic the Gathering and all that stuff to kind of reinforce it, which is great.
Okay, nice.
That's awesome.
Now, you said Star Wars, so I have to ask. Star Trek or Star Wars? Might be a tough one for some people.
For me, it's Star Wars.
Very fair.
I have to say I loved Star Wars. I mean, it had a bigger impact on my life because of the time frame. 1977, I still remember standing in line for it with my dad. It was a big deal. But then again, I don't miss a Star Trek. I love it as almost as much, but in a different way, like it was cutting edge in its own way, like socially, and presented such an optimistic view of the world, but it didn't have wizards in it. Space wizards, right? I mean, so I have a thing for wizards and space wizards, so that's like the best.
Very fair.
Yep, that's fair.
I would also say Star Wars. I just haven't had that much, opportunity to get exposed to a Star Trek. But
Same,
I
man.
did love the Star Trek movies and do want to start watching the series that are kind of branched off of those. So
Feel that.
Yep, I'm more of a Star Trek guy myself, but I love them both. I love them both. The worlds are just amazing.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's move on here. Let's get into the TTRPG aspect of this.
Yeah.
Just to save a little time, I'm going to pick on a few people here. Wade, what got you into TTRPGs?
So as I said before, Jeff is my cousin, and he got me into it. Really what got me into it, though, was starting to listen to podcasts, and the first one I listened to was Adventure Zone. They're so funny, so hilarious, so entertaining that it really got me into it. And then talking to Jeff, he's like, hey, I've been playing games. I'm even thinking of DMing one. And so we got into D&D that way during the pandemic, which was a great time to be able to, kind of associate with people without having to be with them. It was great.
Oh, that's perfect. That's literally my story right there. Right there.
Yeah.
Very fair.
Obviously going a lot further with Critical Role and all their seasons, which is way bigger, but Adventure Zone is kind of where it all started.
Okay, so now let's see here. Okay, Jeff, you're up. Are there any family passions or hobbies that were passed down to you? Any nerdy things that you were always around growing up? Let's say from your parents, and how did that influence your life?
It was funny that you asked actually Star Wars or Star Trek before. My dad actually he would have voted Star Trek. He actually really, he still likes Star Wars, don't get me wrong, but he actually really enjoyed Star Trek. And I can, it was probably the, age, I was probably 4 or 5, and, Star Trek movie in the theaters, which you probably shouldn't have taken a 4 or 5-year-old to, but he was such a Star Trek fan that he dragged me to it. And I just remember thinking, my mind was just blown, right? Because before that, all I had watched is Barney. And so now watching a Star Trek movie, I thought it was just, the most incredible thing I'd ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
It's an awesome memory.
Blows you away the first time you see something like that.
Okay, so now this is going to be for all of you. How did you get to where you are now? Where did all the RPGs begin? And how has it grown since then?
Sure, let me take that one. The way this got started was back in 2000. I created the website neverwinterconnections.com for the awesome Dungeons & Dragons game Neverwinter Nights. That was born out of a need. My friends and I were dying to play it because it offered a dungeon master tool on a video game where you could actually dungeon master the game for other friends and so forth. And it had full cooperative gameplay it was coming out a year in advance, so around 2001. And so we decided we were going to build a matchmaking system. We were like, you can't just play Dungeons & Dragons with strangers. You gotta know who you're connecting with, and there's all these questions you want to ask. You want to ask these questions about who you're about to play with. And so we created this website. You can see it on the Wayback Machine, by the way, the Internet Archive. And we had about 50,000 users. We were the #1 matchmaking site for Neverwinter Nights. We were hosted on BioWare's front page of their Neverwinter Nights page, and they consumed our RSS feed, if you remember what those are, and they would consume all of our game listings and everything like that. And then my other co-founder, K.O. Martin, he and I were talking during the big hubbaloo, I can't even say that word. We were talking about that during the whole misstep by Wizards of the Coast, where we all got pissed at D&D Beyond.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and we were talking about it, and I was like, maybe it's time to resurrect that and bring that forward and support all RPGs on it. So it's like a D&D Beyond with all the RPGs on it, which is where we came up with the name alltherpgs.com. And we wanted to do that. Then we got to thinking about all the stuff we don't like about D&D Beyond, because it's funny. We used it because we were playing 5e at the time. Since then, we've played a ton of others, but we started looking at it and saying, "Gosh, they haven't touched these aspects of D&D Beyond in ages."
Yeah.
Like why can't you have notes on your campaign page? Why can't you do X, Y, and Z on your campaign? And so we started writing down these ideas, and then we were like, well, if we're gonna have people on there, we should let them sell their products too. So, and let's not charge what these other groups are charging. Like we also found out as we did research that DM's Guild in those charge 50% of, they take 50% of what you make, which
they do.
That floored me. I mean, it just, in this day and age, it floored me, just like Audible. So, we thought, well, let's throw in e-commerce, because I've done e-commerce for years as a programmer. Let's throw in e-commerce too, and undercut that and go with like a 10%, just a little bit over, so we can make a profit, but also so we can cover the cost of the credit card transactions and stuff. But we haven't even settled on that number, but we're thinking that low kind of thing. So that's the birth of this project, was way back in 2000.
Man, that's a long time to be working on this idea. But I like what you've been doing. You've been putting yourself out there, and just like, even me, you guys came to me. You saw my stuff, and that's just awesome. Yeah.
Well, that's one of our goals, is to elevate. So much of this industry is the art. And when I say art, it's the art of making the game and the podcasts around the game. It's the community. And we realized with that debacle with Wizards of the Coast that we need to support the community better, which is clearly what they weren't doing. So how do we elevate and celebrate every aspect of this? And that's really what this is about, man, is how do we elevate everybody at the same time? And to me, it needs its own, as you guys called it, a hub, its own social hub that has everything in it: matchmaking, APIs, open APIs, which is another thing we don't like about D&D Beyond, which Jeff can talk to. E-commerce, it can have all of that stuff. And we celebrate each other. That's what it's about.
That was well put. I love it.
No, thanks.
All right. Well, I think it's time to get down to the details. Gallant, you're up.
What's extremely funny is you already hit on a couple topics that I wanted to bring up.
Cool.
So first and foremost, I want to jump in on talking about the percentage of earnings that you suggested you were taking.
Yeah.
I had been concerned because below 50% is often used as a sort of catch-all, right? You see a lot of companies use this like, 50% less than what you were already paying. And it's like, well, for a cable company, that sort of depends. So it's sort of a misnomer. But for, taking a value as broad as 50% and saying, oh, yes, somewhere below it might be 45%, but it also might be something like you suggested, as low as 10%, which very much surprised me. I expected at least 15 or 20. So why so low?
Well, sorry, I'm taking this one again. I apologize, guys.
You're fine, Sean.
Yeah, the way we look at it is we have to build the community. That's one thing, and we want to promote artists. We want to get them their money, etc. We look at it as we're going to probably use Stripe as our technology. How much does Stripe charge us per transaction? So that's the first thing we're going to do, is we're going to check that out. It's not too bad. And then we have to look at our hosting fees, etc. And but the number we've thrown around, honestly, in the background has been 10%. So we may land on 15% once we analyze all that and see our usage and so forth. But another aspect of our business is we've said from the beginning that we want this to be a B corporation, which is a corporation that has more than just profits in mind, but social good in mind as well. It's going to take us a bit to get there, because you have to be a certified B corporation. You have to jump through a lot of hoops to get certified that way. So it's going to take us a bit to get to that point.
For sure.
So what I'm getting at is we're socially conscious, and we want to make money on this, but we want to be socially responsible and make it so that nobody feels that weight is onerous and really taken away from the artist. Because we're a shuttle to get your product sold, but you put in a lot more work than we did, in a sense of around your product. And anyways, those are our beliefs. We feel really strongly about that, so don't expect it to be 45% or anything ridiculous like that.
Totally fair. I, as an extremely vocal anti-capitalist, I love what you're bringing to the table. Absolutely adore it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's very much for the people, which is something that I deeply adore. So, thank you.
Yep.
So, I'm not super familiar with e-commerce as a whole. Usually when I hear e-commerce, it brings up a couple red flags because of, some previous instances in the past several years of online currencies that are less than stellar.
Yeah.
And also some issues within, game systems and other companies and so on and so forth. And so mostly the question is fairly simple. Is it just transition of money from from user to creator? Like, is it as simple as that?
Yes, I would boil it down to that. First, I think reading your subtext there, it would be monetary transactions, not transactions around Bitcoin and everything else.
Okay.
It wouldn't be that. I hope I don't alienate people with this viewpoint, but I'm really big into trying to solve climate change, and I think Bitcoin and all of that has been one of the worst things possible for this time in our world.
Oh, 100%.
I have no desire to support those. If they come up with a way of doing that cleanly, which I can't foresee at this point in time, but if they come up with a way of doing it cleanly, maybe we'd support it in the future. But
for sure,
we would provide an avenue for people to have their own store, so to speak, in our site and list all their products, and somebody would come in with a credit card, pay for those items, or use credit if they have credit with that seller, that kind of thing.
That makes sense.
I think that's it.
Well, that's wonderful. I was hoping it would be a short sort of answer, and I also hope that you don't alienate people with a desire for positive climate adjustment. So an important question that I had was, with a lot of these systems like D&D Beyond and so on that utilize a open system to allow people to come in and use it as they need, mostly for free, what aspects of that system are you planning to paywall, and where is that sort of cutoff there? Because a lot of times, in order to help increase revenue flow, because running a company is expensive, stuff like the way D&D Beyond does. I'm trying to think of literally anything other than the books, and I can't.
Right.
Premium subscription, stuff like that.
There you go.
Number of characters.
Yeah, exactly. So, stuff like that. What is the plan for all the RPGs in that regard?
Jeff, you want to take that, and then I can follow up with anything you miss?
So one aspect that we're looking at, and these are certain things that we're trying to finalize as well, and so some of the things are still up in the air. But frankly, we're looking to do potentially something similar where you get to create so many games and characters for free. Right, and then once you kind of hit a limit of how many characters and games and you could be associated with, and then it would have kind of like a subscription or a one-time fee to unlock more additional content, as well as being able to join more games, create more campaigns, and create more characters.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. We're going to do that. We may have some other items that you can only get through subscription that may cost us money to support. An idea like that would be around 3D dice. I don't know if you guys have checked that out, but it's an API-driven way of rolling dice on your... So in other words, if you go into our site and you create a campaign, you could create a campaign, see everybody's characters on there, put in your notes about NPCs, all of that. But if you want to be able to roll dice on there and see each other's dice rolls on your campaign page on the site, you may have to pay a small subscription fee for that, because we're going to pay 3D Dice, which is, by the way, 3D Dice is a wonderful tool, and we want to support them. And so those are the things we'd be doing. But Jeff nailed it. That's kind of what we have planned right now. With that said, though, we got to see how the market responds to that. We got to figure out where those lines are drawn. Like, is it 5 characters you can create? Is it 10? Is it 20? I don't know yet. D&D Beyond has chosen, I think, 5?
6.
6, I think, yeah.
6. And you can have X number of campaigns as well. So we're kind of going with that model because, honestly, on D&D Beyond, the one monetization thing I don't really mind on their site.
I agree. It's something that sort of, it makes sense from a business perspective of you need to have some sort of premium sort of subscription service in order to make more money, and for having it be more cosmetic options or like space options, much easier to do that than to make, a large section of your service subscription
exactly.
restricted. Well, that's excellent. That makes me very happy.
Oh, good.
In talking a little bit about characters and, games, there are systems in which API is suggested to be easy to work with, right? Like D&D Beyond will say, you can come in and make homebrew stuff, and then you take one look at basically any of the homebrew content that they've suggested, or like any of their homebrew making tools, and it's a living nightmare to sort out if you don't know what you're doing.
Right.
It's like a nightmare scenario. And one of the things that is so distinct about your hub site's planning is that it plans to encapsulate more than just the very standardized, D&D and Pathfinder and Powered by the Apocalypse. And what's really interesting in that is that I want to know how easy it's going to be, not just to build a basic character sheet, but in building, a sheet in general for a game. Because there's a lot of differences between building a Powered by the Apocalypse character and a GURPS character.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is our plan. I'll lay it out here. Every game system we add to our site, which we're going to make it so that you can suggest a new game system and we'll add it kind of thing. We know that there's thousands, so we can't possibly do them all. Although Jeff has been working on that hard lately. But so the way it works is after we add a game system, we can go in and then say, the first thing we do is we upload to that game system a form fillable PDF. So that's like the bare minimum. So in other words, now I can go out and say, I'm going to run this game for Delta Green, and I create a new Delta Green game, and then you come out and you create a Delta Green character. And it says there that at the moment, Delta Green is only supported by a form fillable PDF. And you click on it, you fill out the character sheet, you save that form fillable, and then your GM and everybody can see it. So that's phase one kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Phase two is we use just to go full programming here, we use a JSON structure to be able to define form fields and everything else. So you can come in and define a custom JSON for any character sheet, basically. And that becomes a form fillable character sheet at that point. And that gets stored in our database. And it has we have a tool we'll be releasing which will allow you to paste it into there and check it for any issues, and it'll show you how it looks on the screen, etc. And then, so that's kind of like, probably the word phase is the wrong term, but that's a second level of character generation at that point, where it's no longer a fillable PDF, it's now a actual database entry. Then the third phase, let me back up just a second. All of these will be stored in a database, but they'll also be open source. So we're firm believers in open source. So on our GitHub, where we store our source code, we'll have a whole section around, hey, this is our definition, one of our definitions. By the way, they're all versioned. Here's a definition for a Delta Green character sheet. And you can go in and read it, and you can say, oh, I like what Sean did here, but I actually want to add these skills that I have in my custom game. Now you've added your own, and we'll give you a way to add that to your own campaign or your own character sheet, your own, you know what I'm saying, your own schedule.
Yeah.
Then the third and final level of character generation, which we haven't done yet, is that you'll be able to, we will create a bunch of these. We'll probably start with Shadow Dark first, because it's one of the easier character sheets and character generation methods, kind of the Dungeon Crawler Classics kind of thing.
Yeah.
And what we'll do is we'll actually make a character generator, and we will upload that as a open source project so that others can come out and say, okay, I also, and I'm probably going into too much detail, but we want to hit a whole bunch of broad, like game systems, you know, what's funny when you get on a podcast, all of them fly out of your head. But if we do one for Shadow Dark, that can apply to a lot of those basic Dungeons and Dragons style old school games, old school classics, old school whatever, DCC. We may replicate that across 2 or 3 to show the community how to do that, and then we plan on jumping to another character generator that is the next level of difficulty up. Maybe something that uses, like, let's say Call of Cthulhu, because then you've got Delta Green and you got a bunch of others in that same space. Yeah. We'll make a character generator for that, put it out there as open source, and we'll start to create this directory of open source projects so that people can come out and add to it and create new ones for game systems we haven't yet touched. And so that level 3 of character generation, we hope, will slowly grow over time, and you'll start to get people who volunteer to make it for new game systems, stuff like that. And our hope is that we'll keep making them, but we'll have to see how that plays out. Because obviously character generators get really complex, especially on the bigger games, like you were saying, Pathfinder is a whole nother level of difficulty. So we plan on supporting it, but we may not have the capability of doing it ourselves at that point. So
that's totally fair, and honestly, using the community as a sort of a backup assistant is a pretty fair way in order to sort of incorporate a lot of open skill set to products in which they themselves would be, you know, getting access to. Now,
exactly.
One of the big problems with open source material is people aren't always chill. And you tend to, even in a lot of the time, especially in TTRPG communities, you get sort of the floating baddies, you know, the bad eggs. Yeah. And so this is sort of a two-pronged question at this point of what is your moderation method? With not just in this regard, but also with your matchmaking system, is what are we looking at in terms of like a moderation system in order to ensure that, like, if someone has been or is like a notorious bad egg, how do you plan to, you know, deal with them, and also how do you plan on filtering out those, you know, false responses of the, you know, someone just got mad at another player and so reported them, and how do you manage to how do you plan to deal with those sorts of situations?
Yeah, great question. So that's one of the original things we built in Neverwinter Connections that ended up being a pretty big success, which was when you go into the matchmaking system and you find a game that you want to play, you get to read all about it, right? You get to read about the game, you get to see all the other players in the game, all of that. And then when you elect to join it, essentially at that point, if you go through with that game, or if you don't, let's say, at the end of that game, you get to review the people in the game. So you get to give them thumbs up, thumbs down. You get to put in tags about these guys. You get to, and this goes for GMs reviewing players and players reviewing GMs and players reviewing players. So you get to make comments about everybody. There's even a box where you can check and say the person didn't even show up for the game. You can check all of those things. Now, you may be thinking, well, if somebody's pissed at you, they could just give you bad reviews, right? Yeah. And that's always a danger. But so what we would do at that point is we're going to let people delete a review off their sheet. Now, it gets complex because you want GMs to not, you know, there's always going to be a player that you get that just doesn't like your game, so he gives you a really bad review. We're going to let you delete one every X period of time. So
I like that.
So we haven't nailed that down exactly because we have to do some play testing to understand it.
For sure.
But we had a similar system like this in the past. And then those stats about everybody rolls up, and then there's a little bit of gamification on the site, and this is what we used to have as well, is that you as a GM will go up in levels, and there's titles for all the levels, for how many games you run, how many players you've ran, etc. And then same with players. Players will start out as like journeymen and work their way up, that kind of thing. Journey person, I should say. And you can see everybody's stats at that point. You can see that, let's see, Luke has ran 62 games and he's been marked absent once, kind of thing. And you decided not to delete that review. And these are the keywords that people have said repeatedly about him. Like think of it like a tag cloud. And again, you'll be able to delete some of those tags after a period of time. And just if something's an outlier or if somebody used some bad language. And then, of course, you'll be able to report people on the site, too, to say this person was abusive, those kind of things. And then we'll take each of those seriously and then start looking through all the reviews about that person and see if we see trends in it. So that's at a high level, that's how we plan on supporting fair play in that aspect. Yeah, that's it. So any questions on that?
No, I mean, it seems like a fairly simple and straightforward system, and honestly makes perfect sense to sort of gamify the sort of matchmaking hub system, because it's a space connecting gamers. Might as well make it a little more fun in the process.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think having that gamification there too. By the way, you only really get the gamification if you review each other. That's the other thing is it
incentivizes it.
Yeah, it absolutely does. We saw it in the past. We had, I think it was around 50,000 users on Neverwinter Connections, and people reviewed each other, and that was actually, oddly enough, was one of their favorite things about the site, because you knew what you're getting into usually.
Yeah. Honestly, hearing I'm what we in the business would call very damn young. I wasn't around for a lot of that. I'm in my mid-20s, so I've heard stories about Neverwinter Nights, right? In the ages gone by, but hearing that you gentlemen have already done a lot of what you are planning to do now with the previous site and found success in that gives me much more confidence in this particular product. And I hope it is not too much of an extent for me to say, but perhaps including like that as a bit as a part of a marketing stint of hey, we've done this before, we know how this works. That might be an excellent way to run through that. But again, that's personal purview, and I'm not a marketing director, so
I was thinking that. Wow.
It's hearing 50,000 users over the course, and it makes sense, right? A lot of people will get into games and want to experience games in a more broad spectrum, but can't do that without a forum to do so. That's why so many forum sites got so popular.
Yeah, and there's so many social pitfalls today. So
true.
And I'm not saying it's wrong that we have social pitfalls. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that back in 2000 there weren't as many.
Yes.
And the gaming community in general was a lot smaller. So we're dealing with a lot of different people, and a wonderful byproduct of this is how many different ethnicities, races, genders, etc. are now playing this game where they weren't in the year 2000.
Yeah, that was actually something I wanted to ask about as well, is that there are a very broad spectrum of people that play TTRPGs, and that includes LGBTQ folks, individuals with different ideologies, individuals with different, gender identities, and so on and so forth. And it is important to a lot of these people not only that they have a place to play and a place to find one another, but also a place that is the term that I have used, that I have seen most popularly used, is grognard, for individuals that are very vocally aggressive, we'll call it, against individuals of a different, gender identity, different sexual identity, different, ethnicity, so on and so forth. And so the question is twofold: is how do you plan to sort of include that more broadly, and also what protections do you have for individuals who are marginalized in our communities?
Right. Great question. We've been thinking about this heavily. So when you create a profile on our site, you're able to put in your pronouns. You're able to say, I don't want to show my pronouns. You're able to put in your identity tags, so you can actually go in there and say, I am a veteran, I am queer, I am, whatever. You can label yourself if you want, or you don't have to at all if you don't want. And so if that matters to you, if you want to play with other veterans, or you want to play with somebody in the LGBTQ community, you can look for that on that person, that game master's profile or the other player's profile. And then you can click in and read the reviews about them. You can read what comments were left about them, what their rating is, all of that kind of stuff. So those two things together should allow you to find somebody that you feel is like-minded or part of the community you want to belong to. And then through the review system, you can tag people in a way to say, hey, this person was racist. We don't say that specifically, right? But you can label them as a problem individual. And then we've got to figure out the best way to monitor that. Yeah. Like, is it a threshold? If 2/3 of the table report him as racist, or is it one person reports him as racist, or is it? We don't have the answer to that yet. We want to find the answer. Maybe that's a way we leverage AI in the future here for our site, is to sift through that data. For sure. And train it based off of the people we know, in fact, were racist in the group. Yeah. And we use it to train that data so they can help identify others and look for trends and the keywords, everything else. And then we can start to examine those individuals more. But for sure. Yeah, right now we don't have a for sure answer on that. But like I said, we're thinking heavily about how do we make it a safe place. Sure. One of our long-term plans is that we have chat built into the site too, not just when you log in, you can chat with your friends, but that each game that gets scheduled has its own chat room type of thing. I like that. So you can coordinate and everything else. But then when we do that, it's still on our roadmap, but when we do that, it's even more important to have safety tools there.
Protect and make sure that players are, kept safe in those environments, because those can be much harder to track. Exactly. So that's our number one concern about offering that ability. And that, by the way, that's one of those that would probably be on a subscription basis, because that's a little bit higher cost system. Totally makes sense. And it honestly makes sense to sort of restrict that, but also keep it something that you make sure is, monitored closely and carefully. Yeah. We just haven't figured out how to do that. It's a tough problem, and honestly, the fact that you guys have like a general idea of what you want is encouraging for the future. Yeah, I am delighted by a lot of what I'm hearing, and I'm very, very excited for what you guys are building. Basically, I'm definitely going to keep you guys in mind as the sort of future progresses. Now, one of the things that's important is, while I may focus a lot of my attention and energy towards 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, there's a lot of games, as you said. There's like thousands of different TTRPGs, right? Yep. How do you plan to better advertise less well-known games, smaller games, I don't know of any off the top of my head, because again, I focus most of my energy into Dungeons and Dragons, and very, very much more, right. I don't want to say well-known, but much more, I guess well-known is the correct term, a much more well-known like TTRPG systems. But if I wanted to, how are you going to keep advertising on the smaller games high, so that they're much more visible and can, get more people and get more interest, while also not restricting, third-party stuff for other games that exist? And jumping off that, what is the plan regarding like copyright? Yeah, that's a great question. So I know it's very broad. There's a lot of content that I put in there, but yeah. So one of the concepts we have on our site is we want to give every game out there a landing page, right? So you can go, instead of surfing around trying to find details on Delta Green, we create a landing page about Delta Green. But what we do then also is, if the makers of Delta Green, which I suck because I just forgot their names, and I'm a fan of Delta Green, by the way, but if they contact us, we'll validate who they are, so they get a blue check mark. They don't pay anything for that, by the way. They get a blue check mark, and then we give them ownership. Quiet burns, we love them. Yeah.
we then give them ownership of that landing page, and we give them a bunch of tools on that landing page. So it shows what games are being ran using Delta Green. It shows if they want to show their X feed, Twitter feed, if they want to show those kind of things, who's streaming their game on Twitch, that kind of thing. They can promote those people. And so they get a landing page, and it shows how many gamers have marked Delta Green as one of their favorite games. So it shows that as well. And then one idea we haven't done yet is that we thought of the idea of upvoting games. So if you're a fan of Delta Green, you can go out and click an upvote so that others can see what's trending this month. So as we all expect, last month or the last 2 months, Shadow Dark was trending heavily because they had a killer Kickstarter. It's an awesome game. Kelsey Dion, she's amazing. She's promoting her game. It's a female-led creator. It's all the great things that we want out of the community. And she's, we want to give her own landing page on there to promote her game, show her products. That same page would also show links to buy it in her store, whether it's our store or another e-commerce store, we don't care, that kind of thing. And so again, then you could be able to go out to a page and see what are the trending games this month. Shadow Dark's on its way up, Delta Green's on its way up, that kind of thing. And so you can check it out. And then we're also going to allow people in a matchmaking circumstance where you go out, Luke, you go out and you schedule a game for Delta Green, let's say, and you mark it as a tutorial game, beginner-friendly tutorial game, and then it shows up as, you want to learn how to play Delta Green? Here's a list of people who are running those beginner games this week, that kind of thing. So you could go try it out and learn how to make a character. So
sounds good.
Yeah, so and then we also have plans to allow people to advertise on our site if they want to do that. That one's like phase 2. I don't know if people will take us up on that. And that's we're not doing that for money making. It's more just to get the word out.
Oh, for sure. But a little money on the side can't hurt if that ends up being the case.
Yeah. No, and to jump in there as well.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So something I was just thinking of too is going back to the whole gamification. We could gamify this as well in any new, brand new TTRPGs. The sooner people jump on those and play those, maybe they get a little bit more experience, right?
Oh yeah, that's a great idea.
Which would be great. So then, not only are they, playing some of these big, giant, classic TTRPGs that have been played for decades, but these brand new ones are incentivized to go try those as well.
I like that.
Awesome.
That's a really great way to expand.
Yeah, that's good.
You get a medal, dude. That was a great idea.
That's awesome.
You guys inspired it, so medals all around.
Yeah, you're gonna forever be known for that idea, because that's a fantastic idea. So
I'm glad that you guys could come up with that within this environment, even if it's just for the moment. It's delightful to see that sort of pop out, come together. I don't know that I necessarily have many more questions off the top of my head, because the only other one that I feel would be important to talk about would be the AI situation. You've already sort of discussed, like, hey, what we're thinking about doing is, using it as a way to help sift through data and like moderate certain situations. But I don't think, if you've got no plans beyond that, then it should be fine.
We're not using AI for pictures or anything like that. We're not going to be using. We may use it in our development environment for placeholders, but not in production. So the other thing, I know Jeff's dying to mention it on here, is our API. So Jeff, you want to say something about that real quick?
Yeah, so I know we kind of talked about APIs and integrations a little bit, but one of the aspects of we're trying to make this site not only easy to play any TTRPG or with anyone, but also that it works well with other systems, right? We're not saying you have to use our tool for everything, right? If you have Tailspire or Roll20, but you want to use our system, we're from the get-go, we're planning to have our APIs be open and build integrations so you can seamlessly work within these tools. So if you roll, you don't have to have some Chrome extension plugin to show the roll on Roll20, for example. Or if you have a character sheet, you don't have to toggle back and forth. You could potentially just be in like Tailspire and you could see your characters. And the aspect it comes down to one of our driving principles is, we might be the platform, but it's your games, it's your world, right? And we just want to make sure that we have the tools to make your worlds as easy to run as possible.
Well, gentlemen, I don't know that I necessarily have any more questions. I feel extremely excited. I was already interested prior to us having this wonderful interview. I was interested in the concept. I had a few, worries and wonders because things don't tend to be nearly, cut and dry as they often try to appear to be. But from what I'm hearing from you guys, from us discussing this, it feels like it is as cut and dry as it seems, as we would hope. Andrew, do you have anything for these fine fellows?
Well, I do want to point out that going over the site, it clicked for me during this interview that Jeff Cook is an artist. So I've been enjoying some of these things that are on the site, which provided by you. So that's super cool.
Yeah, thanks.
That's awesome.
I dabble every now and then.
Yeah,
there you go.
I really like the skull one. That's super awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate that a lot, actually. Thank you.
That's great.
All right. And one other thing, Wade, I want to say that I've been seeing what you've been doing online, and you are bringing everybody up. You're bringing everybody together, and I'm loving that.
I did see that. I just took a glance through your Twitter and seeing so many different games, like suggested and like, hey guys, this is a new thing that's out. Hey guys, here's this cool idea that I, so on and so forth. Just like providing that not even to the smaller and less well-known indie creators, and that is wonderful to see happen.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, that's kind of what we're going for, right? We just want to make TTRPGs more available and accessible to everyone, whether you're a creator, a player, a GM, whatever. There's so many adventures to be had out there, and in this world that's so divisive, we want to create something that can really bring people together and bring them some common ground. And we think, adventure's the way to do that, and TTRPGs are the way to do that. So just trying to, put the word out there for everybody that this is what we have. This is what we're building, and hope you can help us build it. Join the ride.
Well, gentlemen, I'm definitely going to be following you collectively and all the RPGs as a whole very closely because, I mean, hey, I was
surprised by this. 100% surprised.
I wasn't sure how these conversations were going to go. I was expecting some more difficult to work with answers, and you guys just kept going, oh no, it's very simple, and you kept knocking it out of the park each time. I threw a curveball, you hit it dead on the mark. It's awesome. I'm very excited.
It's awesome. Well, we're excited as well. We can't wait to get it done, and thanks so much for having us on here to let us talk about what we're building.
Absolutely.
Agree to agree.
It's been a pleasure, and I want to get this open if anybody else has anything they want to add to all of this that they didn't get out there.
I'm good.
I'm good.
I think I'm good. You guys asked some great questions. You covered a lot of topics I wasn't expecting, and you drew it out of us, so thank you.
I'm glad I got some questions out. I keep a very close eye on things around the TTRPG sphere. I'm never gonna not call it Twitter.
Yeah, same.
I'm pretty deep in there, and so there's a lot of stuff that I've seen sort of like passed around as questions, passed around as ideas, and I work in QA, so a lot of the minutia of a lot of this is something that I have to work with every day anyways. So it makes asking these questions not easier, but more informative.
Totally makes sense.
Absolutely. And even more so on Twitter. I'm also going to continue to call it Twitter.
For real.
It's hard to be able to answer some of these questions with the limitations of the platform, right?
Absolutely.
What we're building is so robust, it's hard to dial it into exactly the character limit. So yeah, no, this has been great. We really appreciate the time and you guys planning these questions and recording all of this.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm very glad to be able to do this interview with you, gentlemen. It's very wonderful to do. Been a delightful experience.
Agree to agree.
Agree to agree.